My name is Elena Darrow, and at 67, I thought I had life figured out. I believed that a mother's love, especially the love of a mother who raised a child alone, was unbreakable. I believed gratitude came naturally to children. I believed sacrifice meant something. I was wrong. Painfully wrong. After my husband passed away from a sudden heart attack 7 years ago, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I worked as an accountant for 4 decades, saved carefully, and managed to buy the house I live in, along with 2 small rental units that helped me stay financially stable. I wasn't wealthy, but I had my dignity, my independence, and a quiet sense of pride. My son Rowan was my world. I gave him everything I could: his education, his first car, even seed money to help him start his consulting business. When he married a gentle, soft-spoken school teacher named Hannah, I finally felt some peace. I thought my family was expanding, that I would soon become a grandmother, that all those lonely years after losing my husband were finally turning into something beautiful. Rowan and Hannah asked if they could move into one of my rental units. The market was ridiculous, and they couldn't afford anything decent. I told them they could have it for a symbolic rent, just $300 a month instead of the usual $850, a written contract, all legal, just for clarity. They thanked me with tears, flowers, and promises to always include me in their life. For 6 months, everything was perfect. Sunday dinners, long conversations, Hannah calling for recipes. It felt like the family I'd dreamed of. Then the changes began. Rowan grew distant. Hannah's calls stopped. One evening he arrived wearing an expensive Swiss watch, the kind that costs thousands. Hannah carried a designer purse worth more than my monthly groceries. I didn't ask questions, not yet. But the uneasiness in my chest was impossible to ignore. 2 weeks later, my bank sent me a fraud alert. Confused, I opened my mobile app. My heart nearly stopped. My emergency fund was gone. Over $8,000 spent on restaurants, electronics, travel, and luxury items, all from a secondary debit card I had given Rowan 15 years ago. When he was in college, he still had it. And he had been using it without permission, without guilt, without a single word to me. I felt the world tilt under my feet. But the worst was yet to come, because the moment I decided to confront my son, I discovered something far darker than financial betrayal. The bank's message came on a quiet Tuesday morning. I was watering my geraniums when my phone vibrated with a fraud alert. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Banks made them all the time. But when I opened my account, I felt my knees weaken. My emergency savings, the money I had guarded for years, was almost gone. Transaction after transaction filled the screen behind restaurants, electronics stores, a boutique hotel in Miami, and luxury items I had never even heard of, all charged to an additional debit card under my account, a card I had given Rowan 15 years ago. When he was a college student who occasionally needed gas money, I stared at the screen, frozen. He still had that card, and he had been using it for months. Not once had he mentioned struggling financially. Not once had he asked for help. Instead, he quietly siphoned money while smiling at me over Sunday dinners. My heart sank deeper with every charge I scrolled through. I went straight to the bank. The representative, a young man with gold-rimmed glasses, typed quickly and said, Mrs. Ward. The card showing these charges is active and belongs to an authorized user listed as Rowan Ward. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. I authorized that. Years ago, I finally whispered. He nodded sympathetically. We can lock it immediately. You'll need to file a misuse report since the charges weren't approved. Misuse, fraud, theft. Hearing those words associated with my son felt like swallowing broken glass. I left the bank with trembling hands. Clutching a folder filled with printed statements, proof of something I still didn't want to believe. But the nightmare didn't end there. 2 days later, Hannah called, asking if I could drop off some homemade soup. She wasn't feeling well and Rowan was busy in his office. Her voice was strained, as if she were carefully tiptoeing around something. I drove to their apartment and knocked. No answer. But I could hear Rowan's voice through the cracked window in his office. He was laughing, bragging. "Dude, relax," he said into his phone. I froze the replacement card before she even noticed. She never checks her accounts. And guess what? I canceled her main credit card this morning. Used her info. She'll have to call me crying for help. My blood ran cold. Once she's desperate, he continued casually. I'll take over all her finances. She's too soft to fight me. He said it with amusement. Like it was all a game. That was the moment something inside me broke not my heart, but the illusion I had been clinging to. This wasn't a son in trouble. This was a son who saw his own mother as prey. I walked away quietly, not trusting my voice or my legs. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't fall apart. Something else took root in me instead, calm, cold clarity. Because if my son wanted a power struggle, he was about to discover just how strong a soft mother can be. I didn't sleep the night I overheard Rowan. I sat at my dining table with the folder of statements spread out in front of me, every charge like a bruise on my memory. But instead of breaking down, a strange calm settled over me, a feeling I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. I was done being the gentle mother who overlooked everything. At 8 the next morning, I called Gerald Pierce, the attorney who handled my estate after my husband died. He'd always been patient with me, explaining legal matters slowly, knowing I hated paperwork. "Gerald, I need to speak with you today," I said, my voice firmer than expected. He heard something in my tone. "Come in at 3. Bring all documents." When he finished reviewing the lease agreement, he looked up with raised eyebrows. "Alina, your son has violated this contract in multiple ways. You included a clause for immediate termination if the tenant engages in fraud, harassment, or misuse of your assets." I nodded. I added that after my husband passed. Just in case. He tapped the folder. "You have every right to issue a 72-hour eviction. Legally, he must vacate." The words didn't bring joy, just relief, cold, heavy relief. We prepared the paperwork. I signed the eviction notice with a shaking hand, but I signed it. On Monday morning, a court officer delivered the notice directly to Rowan's door. I sat in my car across the street, watching from a distance. Hannah opened the door, pale and confused. The moment she read the document, her hand flew to her mouth. She looked like she might collapse. A flicker of guilt stabbed me, but only for her, never for Rowan. Over the next 3 days, Rowan tried to call me non-stop. 16 missed calls, dozens of texts. "Mom, what's going on? Please answer. We need to talk. I didn't respond. He even came to my house one evening, pounding aggressively on the door. Mom, open up. You can't do this. I sat silently in my armchair, holding my mother's porcelain teacup, refusing to let him manipulate his way inside my peace again. On the fourth day, Hannah called. Her voice was trembling. Alina, please. Rowan told me everything. I didn't know he was using your money. I swear. I said nothing. We don't have money for a deposit anywhere else, she whispered. Rowan lied about the business doing well. We're drowning, Alina. Please? Give us time. Her honesty pierced me, but not enough to change my mind. You have until Friday at 6, I said quietly. That's the final deadline. She cried softly, but I stayed firm. The damage Rowan caused ran too deep to be softened by tears. By Friday evening, the eviction was enforced. Their belongings were piled by the door as the officer supervised. But Rowan wasn't there, because I knew exactly where he was headed. Straight to my doorstep. And when he arrived, furious and desperate, he said something that shattered whatever was left between us forever. Rowan arrived at my door exactly as I expected, breathless, red-faced, and vibrating with anger. I opened the door slowly, not out of fear, but out of control. He pushed past me into the living room, as if the house still belonged to him. What are you thinking, Mom? He snapped. You can't just throw us out. We're your family. Family? The word felt like salt in an open wound. I kept my posture calm, folding my hands gently in my lap. Sit, Rowan. He didn't want to, but my tone left no room for argument. He dropped onto the couch, glaring. Tell me what you want, he said sharply. Money, an apology. Just say it so we can fix this. Fix. Fix what he broke. I placed a red folder on the table. Inside were the bank statements, copies of the unauthorized charges, and a written summary of his recorded comments. Rowan's eyes flicked over the papers, and his expression shifted from irritation to panic. I can explain. No, I said softly. You can't. He stood abruptly, pacing. I just borrowed it. You have money. You're fine. I was going to pay you back. Borrowing happens with consent, I interrupted. Stealing happens in silence. He froze. And telling your friends that you plan to take over my finances? I added. To make me beg? What do you call that, Rowan? He didn't answer. For a moment, he looked like a child again caught in a lie, searching for a way out, but then something hardened in his eyes. You blew this out of proportion, he hissed. A real mother wouldn't do this. A real mother wouldn't abandon her son. There it was. The cruelty, the blame, the reversal, like he expected me to collapse under guilt. But I was done breaking. That contract was clear, I said. Your behavior violated it. Actions have consequences, even for children. He stared at me with disbelief. And then he played his last card. Hannah's pregnant. My heart stopped. I gripped the armchair to steady myself as he stepped closer. That's right, he said, voice tightening. You're going to be a grandmother. And you're throwing your grandchild onto the street? Think about that. It was a blow aimed precisely at the softest part of my soul. But even that manipulation couldn't undo the truth. Congratulations, I whispered. Truly. But that child deserves a father who doesn't lie, steal, or weaponize innocence. Rowan's jaw clenched. You're choosing money over your own family. No, I replied. I'm choosing self-respect over being abused. He looked stunned for a moment, then furious. Fine, he spat. When that baby is born, don't expect to be part of their life. You're dead to me. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frames on the wall. I stood there in the silence, tears gathering but not of regret, of release. Because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to let go of the person you love most. But what happened months later? When that baby finally arrived, proved that not every ending is a tragedy. And not every broken family stays broken forever. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people remember. No matter how old you are, it's never too late to stand up for yourself.